Hey everyone, today we are going to make some graphs. And in this video, I'm going to walk through step by step everything you need to do to finish this graphing assignment, because I know some of you maybe have never made a graph using a computer before. So for these first couple, if you watch this video, follow along, do what I do on your screen, you will have everything you need to complete the assignment. And then hopefully you'll learn these skills so we can use them in the future when we make other graphs. So just to clarify, the instructions are to enter the data from the assignment description on Schoology and make a digital graph for each experiment. So you should end up with 2 graphs in your spreadsheet. We'll have 2 by the end of this video. Make sure you choose the right type of graph, bar or line, depending on the data you're graphing. And watch this video for help. It's going to be great. I haven't watched it yet because I'm currently making it. But when I do watch it, hopefully it'll help me graph. Let's not think too hard about the time warpiness of that. Okay, so here is a spreadsheet in Google Sheets. It's a lot like Excel if you've ever used that. Google Sheets is probably the most common one you'll be using to make graphs while you're in school here with us. So the first thing you need to do is to enter your data. So if you look at the assignment description, it has 2 experiments. Let's graph the one with clams. You can either take the data and you can type it in manually in these boxes, or you can go to the assignment, you can highlight the text that you want to copy, and you can paste it right into the spreadsheet. So that's what I'm doing right now. I'm highlighting it in another tab at the top, and I did Control C to copy. Now I'm going to do Control V to paste. Cool. Now we've got our data in here. The setup of this data is really important. You want to make sure you have the independent variable in the left-hand column, and then right next to it, you want to make sure you have the dependent variable. This data table just happens to be set up that way already to make our life easier. But when you're graphing using Google Sheets, you always want to make sure you have the independent on the left and the dependent on the right. Next, we are ready to start making a graph. So to do that, the first thing you need to do is to highlight the information you want to graph. A couple ways you can do that. You can either click and drag, but if you're working on a Chromebook or something that doesn't have a mouse, here's a lot easier way to do that. If you just click on the cell in the top left, hold the Shift button on the keyboard, and while you're still holding Shift, click on the cell on the bottom right, and that'll highlight everything in between those 2 cells to get everything you want. So once you have them highlighted, you want to go to Insert at the top, and then come down here to Chart. I know we're making a graph, but in Google Sheets, they just call all graphs charts. And it's working. Ta-da! So don't be fooled. Usually it'll come up with something that looks pretty good, but it's not always perfect to start. So I'll show you some things you have to do to change the graph. First of all, we want to make sure we have the right type of graph. So see how it put our independent variable on the x-axis down here? That's good. That's what we wanted. And it put the dependent variable on the y. And whatever we typed in to these boxes, it copied those onto the axis. So our labels are already, or our axes are already labeled, which is great. Let's make sure we want a line graph and not a bar graph here, because it looks like it defaulted to a line graph. Well, we've got temperature down here, which is measured with numbers. And anything you measure with numbers on the x-axis should be a line graph. Check. However, this is really confusing. Over in chart type on the right, we actually do not want to select line chart. We want to be able to see our individual data points, because this sort of shows a line, but we want to be able to show the individual points. So they've got suggested. What we want is a scatter chart. If you do not see it in suggested here at the top, they hide it way down here. If you change the chart type to scatter, now we can see each individual data point, which is good. Next, we are going to change the title. So it gives us number of developing clams versus water temperature. But remember, we had a specific format for our titles. So to change that, click on the Customize tab here on the right, and then Chart and Axis Titles. And we've got chart title up here. We can highlight this and type in something else. So let's call it the effect of water temperature on number of developing clams. Cool. So now if we look at the graph so far, the effect of water temperature on number of developing clams, title looks good. The axes look good. If you want to clarify this, so the rules say we should have a unit in parentheses with each of our axes. So if you want to add a unit just to show that we're talking about individual clams here, under the Customize tab, under the labels, we can go to vertical axis. That's going to be the y-axis. And we can add number of clams. Just to clarify what we're talking about, to show that we mean individual clams, not like 10 clams or dozens or each 50 clams or something like that. So it'll clarify. If it gets cut off here with the dots, that's okay. We can resize the chart later to be able to see that. There are a couple other things we're going to want to do to make sure our graph is looking good. Next thing we want to do is make sure that we include the 0.00 here, because it looks like our water temperatures, if they're going by tens, this is going to stop at 10, and we would really like to have the 0.00 down here. So to take care of that, if you go to horizontal axis and you scroll down, this will let you set a minimum and maximum value. If you go ahead and put 0, that'll guarantee that it goes all the way to 0 so we can see the shape of our data. You can do the same thing for the vertical axis. It looked okay in this example, but if you ever have a graph where it tries to cut off your vertical axis and doesn't take it all the way to 0, you can type it in the minimum box there to make sure it does. All right, the last thing we have to do with this graph is to add a trend line. To do that, we're still in the Customize tab, click on Series, and then click Trend Line. So you can see we got a trend line there. That's a really bad fit because the data looks kind of like a curved shape. We don't want a straight line. That line looks like it doesn't fit the data at all. So under Type, you can try out some different types here and try to look for one that kind of describes the data. Don't choose moving average. Moving average might look like it fits, but it's not a smooth line. It's not what we really want here. So of those choices, I think polynomial looks good. And notice how it doesn't directly go through every single data point. That's okay. It captures the overall trend in the data, which is the whole point of the graph in the first place. If you want to spiff up your trend line, you can go ahead and label it. If you click Use Equation, it gives you the mathematical equation in a y equals format up here. And you can also show the R squared. R squared is a cool little statistical measure. It tells you how well the trend line fits the data. An R squared value of 1 means it's a perfect fit. So the closer you are to 1, the better the trend line describes the data. And with that, I think we're officially done with everything we'd have to do with this graph. If you want to express yourself, there's a whole lot more you can do to make this graph your own. You can change background colors. You can change the color of the data points. You can choose the shape of the data points. You can make them squares or diamonds or stars. You can change the size. You can change the fonts. You can really make it fun. If you're ever making a graph for a presentation or something, it's a great idea to change the settings from the default, because everyone that makes a graph is going to have the same default settings. But if you change the colors, yours will really pop. Okay, I think it's time for our second graph. You can make that anywhere in your spreadsheet. If you like, you can click this plus button and add a new sheet. I'm just going to make it on the same sheet, however. I'll just scroll down. And for the second one, we're rolling a ball all over different surfaces, and we measured how far it went. So here's our data. I'm copying it from the information page on Schoology, and I'm going to paste that into our document for graphing here. And this data table was presented horizontally. Sometimes you can get a decent result, but I'm going to type it in vertically just to guarantee that we get the independent and the dependent variables the way we like it. So we've got surface over here, you got tile, wood. Okay. And you want to take it out. So it looks like you have 79, 85, 135, 47, and some more. Cool. Now that we have our data, notice that we have the independent variable on the left, dependent variable on the right. We threw our units in here. Type of surface doesn't have any units, and that's okay. And notice that this is independent because we changed it. We chose what the surface was, and then we measured what the distance was. So highlight those either with your click and drag or click, shift click, insert, chart. Here's the chart. Looks like it tried to do a scatter plot for us because last time it's like, oh, you wanted a scatter plot? Neat. Well, that's actually not what we want for this graph, because if you look at our x-axis, ceramic tile, wood, shag carpet, all-weather carpet, vinyl flooring, those are not numbers. What number comes between wood and shag carpet? I don't know. It doesn't make sense. If these are not numbers, that means it should be a, you got it, bar graph. So you can choose that down here. They call it a column chart. If it doesn't show up in suggested, you can scroll further down. Here's a good old-fashioned column chart. They've got all kinds of different fun charts you can mess around with, but regular column chart should do it for us. And let's do some checks here. So distance in centimeters, that looks good. Goes down to the point 0 on the y-axis. That's good. There are no breaks in the y-axis. We have a label down here for type of surface. We've got all of our different categories labeled. And the last thing we need to do to this is change the title to our format that we like. So customize chart and axis titles. Let's go up to chart title. And let's just call this the effect of surface type on distance ball rolls. And when we have a bar graph or a column chart here, you do not need to add a trend line. The reason is the line wouldn't really mean anything. So a line going from ceramic tile to wood to shag carpet wouldn't really mean anything because these aren't numbers. So all you have to do for this assignment is to recreate these two graphs in the spreadsheet. Don't forget to submit your document through Schoology. That's the only way I'm going to see it. Don't make your own document. Don't share it with me. If you make it with the template in Schoology and you submit through Schoology, I will get it. I'll be able to grade it there. If you want to have fun, you are welcome to customize your graphs, change the colors, change the fonts, express yourself a little bit. And if you have any questions, stop by office hours, or you know how to send me a message. And hopefully you learn some good graphing skills we can use in the future. Until next time, keep on graphing and doing biology and stuff, and I'll see you there.